HydroMaster in our continuing series of operations and maintenance videos. Today we're going to be looking at the 423s. It's the second in line, step up from the 318 HP and the 318. We're going to go over some of the things that this machine is capable of doing. I want to start by looking at the front of the machine here, and we'll take a look at the gauges, we'll take a look at the dials, we'll see what we can do here, and then we're going to move back into the machine to identify the major components, things that you'll be interested in maintenance and just what they do. So starting at the front of the machine here, we have the on-off switch. This is the key. This will start your machine for you. This is the temperature gauge. Now the temperature gauge is going to be for the water temperature that you're going to need for whatever cleaning you're doing, whether it be for upholstery at a low temperature or if you like to dial it up hot. If you're cleaning hard surfaces, you'll have the ability to move this dial to dial in the temperature that you're looking for using the temperature gauge here to determine where you are. That temperature gauge is going to read the temperature at the machine, depending on how much you're going to have out, how much hose. That temperature at the end of your wand may be a little bit different than that, depending on conditions. But you can start by looking at what your temperature that you're trying to achieve on this gauge. We also have a water pressure gauge here. You'll be able to dial the water pressure accordingly, depending on if you're cleaning hard surfaces and you want a lot of pressure, or if you're used to using 300 pounds to clean carpet. That's what you're going to be looking for right there. The next gauge on our front panel is the vacuum gauge. This is going to be able to let you see where you are as far as what your lift is, what you're looking for. Normally it's set at about 12 inches of mercury, and but you'll be able to look at this to see, dial it in as you need. Our next gauge here, which seems small but is very important, is our hour meter. The hour meter is going to allow you to follow how many hours you're actually running the machine to determine things like maintenance, oil changes, and things like that. That's very important. When you call the tech center and you're interested in getting some information, that's virtually the first thing we ask you is how many hours are on the machine. So that's a very important gauge. Down here we have the choke, cold starters in the mornings. Pull the choke out till it gets going, push it back in, you're off and running. You have your throttle here. The throttle is a twist throttle and a pull. You don't have to be a Superman when you pull it out, just it moves out very gently and goes back in the same. You can throttle up. It has a governor on it that'll only let it throttle up to a certain RPM. These machines are designed to run at 80% of capacity for not only the engine, but the other components as well. That's peak performance at 3,000 RPM. The next we have down here is the solution out, and this is where it comes from the chemical injector. By the time it's out here, it's been heated, the chemical has been added, and this is where you hook your solution hose to. The next thing down here is the lube port, and the lube port is designed for shutdowns at the end of the day. We'll show you more detail in a little bit, but that's where you will inject your lube for your blower to shut down at the end of the day. Here's your freshwater connector right here. Whether it's coming from the home or you have an onboard freshwater tank, this is where your connection is going to be. The next thing over here on this side is the freshwater tank that's on this machine, 5-gallon freshwater tank that's on the machine. This allows you to drain it right here. That's all it is. You hook up a small hose to it. You can drain it down on the ground when you're done or into a container, depending on what's in there. We have the pressure control knob. This will allow you to adjust your pressure, your water pressure, right here. These two items are very important. There are screens inside here that you need to check daily that are for the fresh water, and these screens will capture any contaminants that are in there that will possibly plug or cause problems in the pressure system. There are orifices inside here, each one of these, 2 different size. You need to make sure that do these one at a time, clean the screen, and make sure that orifice is the same one that came out of here goes back in. They are 2 different sizes, and that will interrupt the performance of the machine if they get switched around. So be very careful about that. The last item here on the panel is our chemical injection system control. When we have the need for chemical, which you usually are going to have, you're going to be able to prime this. Putting it in the down position will prime the air out. That goes back into the waste tank, and it allows it to be full of the chemical that you're using for the day. It's going to bounce around here on the top a bit, but once it settles down, then you can turn it to the on position, full straight up, the on position, and you can adjust the flow of your chemical with this knob right here. This will allow you to mix your chemical on a per hour basis. So follow the instructions on whatever chemical you're using, dial it in. You're going to need to have your tool by you at the time and release the trigger, and you'll be able to determine whether you're getting 3 gallons per hour or 4 gallons per hour, but that is a per hour meter. And the last 3 things I want to point out here, these switches here, are going to be, 2 of these are options for the machine. One of them is a freshwater system. If you have a freshwater tank that you're pulling your freshwater into a system rather than hooking it up to a hose, we have already pre-wired a switch here to allow you to turn that on, which will start your freshwater supply coming into our machine. The second item here is the switch for the APO, or the automatic pump out, and it will allow you, if you have an option for the automatic pump out on your waste tank, this will supply the power to it. Again, it's pre-wired, ready to go. If you don't have those 2 options, then these switches won't be used at all. The last one is your pump clutch. This switch here will allow you to be able to turn your pump clutch off in a case of doing water extraction, where all you're doing is pulling water. You're not doing any washing or pressure washing or doing anything like that. You can actually turn your pump off so that it doesn't have to be running the full time while that's going on. You can have the pump on in a non-heat mode, and you can also have the pump on in a heat mode. It gives you some options here depending on what job you're doing that day.